I don't think we need to say much as regards the shadow fighting at this stage of our training. We should all be extremely clear about how important the shadow fighting actually is. Okay, let's start our first recap class of the yellow grade. In this first clip, we see the boys showing the two-man predator, and Ruben is working from standing and kneeling. But can you remember what we were trying to instigate here? Instinctive reaction, yeah. But instinctive reaction to do what? That's right, get back to our feet as fast as possible. Sounds easy, but as we now know, words are easy, actions are a lot harder. In this clip we just added the third level, and the third level was sitting. This exercise also helped us to really understand one thing that the human really does under stress on the ground, which was what? Grabbing. Only KFM has developed this instinctive grab into quite a radical weapon, and it's now called, can you remember? The Garamono. This exercise helped us to break the condition of what is typically perceived as a breakfall in the street. Obviously, a lot of what we investigate needs a clear and open mind, as preconceived images and thoughts can really affect the way in which we receive this new information. Thus, we need to observe and listen very, very carefully. It's difficult not to prejudge, because as soon as our eyes see a thing, the brain kicks in and tries to make sense of the images that it's now registering. If the brain can't work out what it's seeing, it will automatically compare it to anything similar from our past experiences, as this is all the brain has to go by, past experiences. This is why observing new information is difficult for us to deal with, as the brain has nothing to cross-reference it with. What else did the pensacodo exercise teach us about the breakfall? It taught us the pensacodo is not a passive or recovering motion, but actually a ballistic form of attack, with only one objective in mind: total destruction of the opponent. Train the last development of the pensacodo from sitting. Sitting is one of the four major levels that exist within a street fight, but it is also a difficult area to develop properly. Therefore, we need to pay great attention and make sure we develop all of our work systematically, because any piece of the puzzle we omit now means the bigger picture is not so clear later on. The double strike is an interesting development, although we haven't really opened the door on this subject properly yet. But the first part we need to make sure we catch is the continued development of the mechanics in application, and not just the mechanics in the technical development, as they are both very different as far as functionality and ability are concerned. The other part that the double strike instigates is that of the retractor. Like we said, it's not an area of study yet, but we are priming our mechanics. So when the time arrives to develop this subject, our mechanics and intentions will be very clear, and the development will be radical, which is cool. Double striking while sitting once again will provoke many questions, and in truth that's the objective. But at this stage we are still keen to focus on the mechanics. Keeping a good structure under a little pressure is difficult, but under extreme pressure, well, you can imagine. Therefore developing the levels as we are is crucial, and the mechanics are the platform of the application. Okay, here we go. Recap week 2. Can you remember what we were trying to transmit as far as the concept of breakfalls in the street were concerned? Well, the classical interpretation of a breakfall is far removed from the angle that we are keen on developing. If we're going to hit the floor, then we need to be attaching to or destroying anything that we touch or anything that we can get a hold of on the way down to the floor. Question for you. What is the objective of the KFM Urban X program? Not sure? You should be. Provocation. The Urban X program is intent on provoking our minds. This is the only way we can develop the inner creativity of what we believe is really possible. Therefore, we must be constantly observing and questioning everything that we do and everything that is happening around us. Can you remember in this exercise we isolated each of our major weapons? And why was that? Well, do you remember how we spoke about the functionality of our basic weapons? And the fact that many people confuse knowing a thing with actually applying a thing in a chaotic environment? We humans are emotionally charged, and it is for this reason that cultivating our instincts is far more important than just learning a collection of funky techniques. We are capable of responding quite differently to the same situation, depending on our emotional state. This is something that we all know. Therefore, it shouldn't be too difficult for us to see and appreciate that it's not the techniques that drive the fight, but that of our emotional state and instinctive reactions. In this exercise, we mix the concept of how we receive an attack and how we return an attack. So what's the difference between the pensador and the pens attack? Well, the pensador is the instinctive framework that is used as a defence mechanism, but the concept is to destroy an incoming attack, and not to receive the attack in a passive or submissive manner, as with most forms of defence. The basic concept of parrying or blocking doesn't really function in this kind of environment. The pens attack is a radical evolution of instinct, and was something that we found through pure experience. Our objective in the past was how to develop instinctive reaction into a serious weapon, a weapon that we only needed directing and developing, as it already lay within our blood. The pens attack has, over the years, developed into a radical and ballistic defencing attack. Its instinctive and destructive applications are nothing short of animalistic, and combined with the emotional and physical brutality, this is the only way to stop a serious physical violation of our personal well-being. The pens attack is a pure blood-borne smash and enter principle. It's what people try to do anyway, they just don't know it. And more so, they don't really understand how to develop it. KFM loves provoking the conditioned mind. We always like to ask why and then question the response. It keeps the blood moving and the mind always challenging itself. Because in truth the human can be easily led. But if we are constantly provoking questions within ourselves, it keeps the mind alert and active. This is how we can avoid the typical mind traps that can be so detrimental to our training development and ultimately our personal growth as a human being. Can you observe what different ranges are in play during this development? All of them. Two-man predator helps us to understand that everything around us changes from second to second and thus compounds the importance of range and level development in the early stages of our training. We have listened to many philosophical twists regarding masters of the martial arts and the mysteries of grandeur across the years. But all we know is if you plant an orange seed, then an orange tree you will grow. Basically meaning there are no secrets. If you plant a seed and then need to wait 10 years to see what that seed turns into, there will be many years pass where you have no understanding of what you're growing. And that's not very intelligent really, is it? But on the other hand, if you know what seed you plant from day one, then you know what to expect, what you'll eventually get, and also how to cultivate it along the way. Developing our personal characteristics is like a great chef. For example, a punch is a punch, or is there more to it than that? For a chef, a piece of chicken is a piece of chicken, or is it? A chef expresses the creativity of his mind via the kitchen. He has the ability to make your mouth water and send your brain on a chemical high, or give you food poisoning. A martial art teacher is no different. He can develop your ability to think freely and for yourself, yet still be an honourable and respectful warrior of life, or brainwash you into being a submissive and subservient disciple, basically food poisoning of the brain. One of the great parts about this kind of training is that it will teach you to express you. Sure, we can teach you the formula, as with music, but ultimately it will be your expression of how you understand and express the methodology. All of our top team instructors receive the same information and training methods, yet all are uniquely different. We asked a little earlier, what is the concept of the programme? Now we ask, what is the concept of the training? Well, this is the part we've spoke about a lot, and hopefully by now you have absorbed and understood the answer. This is of course the cultivation of instinct. Another question for you. Where was KFM really born? In the fight. I know many of you may say on the street, and this is also very true, but KFM's true birthplace was actually in the fight. It was the animalistic instinct in Husto's blood that sparked the true beginning of what is known today as the Keysi fighting method, or KFM for short. Whilst recapping these exercises, don't forget that many times they are shown at a moderate pace in the early stages of training. One of the reasons for this is to give the predator in the middle the chance to play and experiment with his emotions and technical ability combined. Obviously the level of intensity can be lifted as and when needed, and as long as everybody understands what is going on, you can have a real blast whilst at the same time respecting your training partners. Can you remember what we call the climbing part of this exercise and why it plays such a key role in the first stages of training? Well, it's called the monoscala, but we all know that by now, right? And it plays a key role as it's one of the first yet extremely effective ways of getting back to our feet fast. Time is of the essence in the street, so any development that aids in our quest to get up as fast as possible is taken and studied very seriously. And of course, all of this work will provoke all kinds of questions and expose many of the real problems with the urban combat. Well, that's what the whole objective is, provocation, as this is the only way to instigate troublesome and anarchic questions. What topic of study did the CORTEMANGA open up? Well, it opened the very provocative and controversial subject of street trapping. It's a subject that KFM grew up with and has an obscene amount of mind-bending developments that we will touch upon as we continue to travel through the Urban X programme. Another very important point for us to catch at this moment in time is the way in which we brace the elbow attack by grabbing our own bicep. This serves many purposes, but one of the main reasons is protection. It means we have the power to look the opponent in the eye. This is very daunting and emotionally destructive to the opponent, and anything that can wobble the emotional state of our opponent is good by us. A lot of developments within the KFM trapping were cultivated whilst working the doors over the years. This was a place where many things were observed and later studied. The subject of urban trapping really is a fascinating one, and to be honest, probably one of my favourite subjects of all time. We will get the chance to see, study and investigate more on the Urban X street trapping throughout the entire Urban X programme. So make sure you get to grips with the CORTEMANGA, as this is only the beginning. There's lots more fun to be had yet. Well, this is the final clip in this recap class, so make sure that you continue to train and develop all the elements we have touched upon. Most of all, make sure you put plenty of time into the CORTEMANGA, as this is the first evolution of trapping that spawned out of the PENSACODO. And as you will see very clear in time, the PENSACODO really is a Pandora's box, as once we start to open it, you never know what kind of wild and crazy thing will happen next. So until next week, have fun and remember, train hard but train safe. Week 3 of the recap we called the basic takedowns. Remember how we used the punch and the pence attack to make a connection and then attacked with the double garamono? In this specific piece of work, the double garamono is called the garacuello, as we are specifically attaching to the neck in this instance. Also notice how Justo redirects the opponent in order to create a partial shield. Simple yet very important. As with many of the things that we will be developing, the first step is exactly that, the first step. Basically meaning that when we introduce a new piece of the puzzle, there are a lot more pieces needed to complete the full picture. Understanding the process of learning is just as important as the physical aspect of the programme. Confusion is and can be a big problem for us. We must be very clear about many things whilst developing the different areas of study. But most of all, we must be clear about which piece of the puzzle we're actually holding and which picture it belongs to, because if not, it will always be a loose piece that has no place and in the end will get discarded, and that's definitely not our objective, is it? You can see how much we emphasise the importance of getting back to our feet. Obviously we know, but definitely not easy when it all kicks off. We have found that over the years, this kind of predator training helps to develop many of the things that we're all in search of. It wakes up our own truths. It helps us to really understand and acknowledge what we're capable of and clarifies our weaknesses. But clarifying our weaknesses is also a very important thing, because we need to expose them in order to face them. And it's best we expose them during training, as we have the opportunity to do something about them. Because if a weakness is exposed in the street, then it's definitely the wrong time and the wrong place to be finding out. Remember how we evolved the CORTEMANGA into an actual takedown? There is always a reason behind why a movement evolves or changes its purpose. You look how when we write or say a simple thing, we only need to change one word or say something with a slightly different tone in order to completely change the context of that transmission. Well, our training development is no different. We may be studying or trying to apply a specific thing, but when only the slightest change occurs within a given situation, this will consequently affect the whole picture. You look how fast we can build a development exercise. We only need to introduce 1 or 2 new elements in order to give the training a whole new feel. This is true of everything that we learn. The one problem that we must keep under control though is the tendency to get carried away with the training developments. What do we mean by that? Well, because everything that we actually do consequently opens up 1,000 other doors, it's very easy to become blary-eyed and start saying things like, yeah, but couldn't you do this? Or why don't we do that? In truth, we can do whatever we like, as long as we understand what we're doing. The problem is when we lose sight of the objective in hand. Hence, don't run. We need to walk and talk our way through the training developments in order to catch the attributes. Because this is a recap class, you should have had plenty of time to study and reflect on the work. You should be able to start seeing things that are sat right in front of us, just waiting to be exploited. And if not, don't worry, all will reveal itself in time. The fun part is all the investigating, because it's like a good conversation. We need constructive and provocative questions in order to make the conversation interesting. What we all need is the physical and emotional questions to make our work interesting and productive, and in the end, functional.
One of the seeds we planted with this work was how the kick is equally effective in all ranges and all levels. As we have said already, it is important to know what seed we are planting. You see, we may not reap the fruit in the short term, but at least we know what fruit that seed will bear in the future. Our constant frustration is the time. You see, it's just not possible to defy the learning process. That's why this simple yet profound analogy about the seed and the tree is so relevant to us. Because even when we plant an orange seed and we know what we will grow, an orange tree, and the end result will be an orange, it still takes time. There are no real shortcuts. The other thing that these exercises provoked was how we start developing a specific weapon from whatever level we happen to end up in. Now our abilities start to take on a multi-dimensional form, and we really start progressing as we first dreamed. But let's not forget, much discipline and hard work lay ahead, and we need to forge the path least trodden. Pioneering our own path is never easy, but extremely rewarding, as we express our own creativity of the mind, and our body reflects all the hard work and dedicated training hours that we have invested over the years. There was one other thing that we touched upon when we last looked at the kicks. Can you remember what that was? We touched upon the subject of footwear, because depending on the style of shoe we are wearing, this will ultimately have an effect on how we adapt to the given situation. Many streetwise fighters carry and modify all kinds of weapons, the shoe being one of them, as it's a part of their everyday attire. So when we study an area of interest to us, we need to observe and take into consideration all the associated problems that are related to the subject in question. And this, my friends, is a never-ending journey of investigation, so make sure you enjoy the journey, because it's all we have. Until next week, enjoy.
Okay, this is the last recap class of the yellow grade, so let's close this work properly and then we can crack on and attack all the new work for the orange grade. Can you remember what we said about the Garaqueo? Well, it's a very simple yet instinctive way of grabbing hold of somebody in the street, and it gives us a relatively effective answer with not that much training under our belt. It also touched upon another area, one that we spoke about but never opened properly, yet. It touched on the subject of the human shield. If we watch Roland, we can see how he redirects the opponent to create a kind of human shield. The attribute we're trying to develop is grabbing hold of somebody and redirecting them, but in doing so we touched upon the human shield. If we watch any CCTV footage of street fights, you'll see that ragging people around is very typical, therefore something that we study very early on. Usually a non-trained person in the street doesn't have that much skill in taking people to the ground. Nevertheless, it nearly always ends up there. Why? Well, ragging somebody around is usually enough to do the job, so that's why we need to get good at it. Simple, really. We should also be developing a big appreciation for the Garamono. Grabbing, as we have said, is a very instinctive thing to do in a fight, so if we study the different moments within the fight and develop our attributes accordingly, then the grab becomes a very serious weapon for us. It gives us the ability to damage, grab, redirect, take down, climb, plus many more, but these are what we've looked at so far. Our last developments of this work were from sitting. As you'll have noticed throughout the yellow grade, we work these three areas a lot: standing, kneeling, sitting, and with very good reason. It's to program and cultivate our instinct reaction to get up, but in an effective manner, because standing up in the middle of a fight is not easy. Many people receive obscene damage just simply trying to get up. If you are following the process step by step, you should have all the work down pretty well now, and if not, simply put a little more time and effort in now, because as we have said a few times already, this is only the beginning, and we're not joking when we say this, so if you neglect the development time here, you will really struggle later on for sure. Now we touch upon the provocative subject of the ground. The ground is an area of fighting that provokes all kinds of debates. But once again, that's not our concern. We just need to be observing what's really going on and then studying. Clearly the ground is no place to be in the street. But are we able to develop ways of destroying this area? Well, yes is the answer. But there are some simple things that we need to be very clear about while studying the ground. One of the first and most dangerous consequences of fighting on the ground in the street is that of multiple opponents, as obviously this changes everything. Fighting one person on the ground is difficult enough, but dealing with multiple attackers is quite simply a disaster. There are so many more things that we need to take into consideration, apart from how does the ground game work. One simple thing we need to truly understand is the difference between sport and the street. Sounds too obvious, but it's not. If you study and learn in one fashion, then that's how the brain will react under stress. Sport mentality is quite different to that of a street fighter. Not wrong or bad, just different. A street fighter has no morals and no respect. He will do whatever it takes to damage your life permanently. Give him an inch and he really will take a mile. So it's not about this versus that. It's about understanding the kind of people that live and fight on the streets. They're dangerous, very, very dangerous. More than most people give credit. Hence the street is not a game, unlike the sport. If you come second place in the Olympics, you're able to stand proud with your head high whilst raising your silver medal to show to the rest of the world. A hero, as it were. There are no silver medals in the street, only a gold medal and a hospital bed for second place. This is not a joke, eh? People always get lost in debates about styles, etc. This is not where it's at. We need to understand what we're actually dealing with, and that's very dangerous people with no compassion. One of the first things we need to learn is that there are no right or wrongs in the street, only the moment. We get what we get, and we have to answer it there and then. Changing position is something that plays a big part of sport ground fighting, but the street possesses different problems. The main one being time. We don't have the luxury of time in the street, so we learn to fight from all positions and not favour just one. We will enter the ground in a lot more depth as we go through the programme, but we need to start somewhere, and the beginning is the best place. Now we recap the changing of the jacket. This is a simple yet amazing way to develop our work. It creates one simple thing in the beginning: confusion. If you've trained this exercise a lot, you will probably have felt this. Even when you know what you're supposed to be doing and in what order, you still finish up saying, is it you or me? Why? Quite simple: stress. When we lift the intensity, we lose track. And this is only in the training, don't forget, nowhere near the real stress of the street. Learning to operate under stress is vital. If we can't hold it together under training conditions, then we're really going to struggle in the street. Obviously we hope we never need to, but if that unforeseen event ever crosses our path, then we need to have an answer. One thing we would like to point out at this time, as some of you may be able to see it and some of you may not, is the fact that the person applying the work is focusing on his work and one opponent. It is important that we can see and understand this, as this will evolve as we travel deeper into the training programme. As we have said many times already, it's impossible to develop everything all at once, so we can't always have the full-blown picture in the first step of the training developments. We take this kind of training into the nightclubs on a regular basis. By that I mean we rent a nightclub and take everybody there in order to develop and understand the application side of things a little better. When all the lights are in full swing and the room is smoked up, plus the music is pounding, developing the changing of the jacket is very interesting, as it exposes all kinds of problems, which is clearly the objective of the training. By training like this, we answer many of the common questions that are often asked about the self-defence arena. The typical ones like, yeah, but how would you do that? Or, what if he does this, then what? Remember how we said that we first need a question? Well, the nightclub training provokes many questions, and it's great fun investigating the answers. as we receive a different one every time. This is how we understand that there are no fixed ways, only the ability to adapt to any given situation as best we can. The good part is we stop asking and start looking, as this is one of the never-ending problems in the martial art world. The constant bickering about this versus that, talk, talk, talk. They waste too much energy in the wrong arena. If people just get on with the job in hand, the whole community would be a lot more productive, and there would be a genuine connection between the arts, but there isn't, and there never will be. So we only have two choices, do it or debate it. I think I know which one you prefer. The other kind of environmental training that we have spoke about was the late night training classes. We will be seeing a little more of these in the green grade. Again, they are very, very interesting and will expose many problems, but by doing so, it will give us the chance to address them. We will also see why the concept of the ground fighting is quite different to that of the sport arena. But when we see the environment, it's easy to understand why. Can you also remember how in Control 4, or typically known as the mount, how we adapt this position, as we have different objectives to that of the competition mat? And I will repeat myself one more time. Street development is different to that of the sport. Not better, just very different. If we all know what we're trying to achieve, then we are able to look at everything with a genuine and relative perspective. Again, this position is commonly known as the guard. But can you remember what we said about the Control 5? Well, a sport fighter may well throw guard, or choose the guard as a strategically strong position to fight from. And in the correct environment, this is a very successful strategy. But now we all know, this is not a good place to be for a street fight, especially if we are on bottom position. Basically meaning we have a very different mindset. So in closing with this last clip, make sure you get plenty of training time on the ground controls. And remember, this is the first stage of the ground, and we have a lot to investigate and develop here. And it's a minefield of questions, and all require a valid answer. Not talking, but physical answers. So training, training, training is the way. See you next week for the first class of the orange grade. Till then, have fun.